Hi there, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. Today we're looking at the latest news updates which have been provided by Candice Cooley and the interviewer Nate Eaton. Finally, East Idaho News Channel has done an interview with Candice Cooley regarding CrimeCon, what it was all about, but also the updates directly within the Dylan Rounds case and search for Dylan. We're going to be looking at that today. I'm going to be analysing key points and what to take from that interview. I know for others out there, it's been a negative response like usual, but I'm going to try and look a little bit deeper just to try and understand what's been said and just give my own thoughts. And you can share your own thoughts down below in the comment section or in the live chat box if you're currently here. And you can share some other thoughts, opinions and reactions about different stuff, because I guess as of recently, whilst I've been taking a little step back, which has been good, a lot more has happened all of a sudden, right? Isn't that kind of strange? I mean, I've been doing videos almost every single day, and then the moment I stop, you got news coming out here, news coming out there, all of a sudden, right? And now, granted, it was inevitable, 2nd of October, when it was upcoming, that was going to happen regardless, whether it went through or not. It was in place as for what people were anticipating or hoping for. But besides that, this CrimeCon interview, wasn't really expecting it. I referred to it previously, and now it's just happened. So it's kind of interesting. And I think you put that aside, I guess there's a lot of background drama and conflict happening. As I said, I'm not quite sure what's going on there or with who or where it started, but that aside, today we're looking at Dylan Rounds, and what we're going to do, we're just going to kick things off immediately. We're going to look at the key points from the update by Candice Cooley. Then later on, we can look at the comments, points of views from different people out there, including the YouTube comment section of that interview video, because I believe Jim Terry left a comment or two, which, is it no surprise? I guess not. I don't think it was in capital letters, so I guess that's a bit of a shock to some. As well, we can also look at the comment section of the last video I did to acknowledge any key information additional, or if there's any questions that need answering. And then if there's anything else that needs to be looked at, we can do. But make sure to stick around from start to finish to fully understand what's been mentioned today, okay? As for the last video I did, shout out to Maria, of course. Was it Badger? Was it Skeptical? I can't remember if I've already said the shout-outs, but shout-outs to them again, and also Maria, because I do remember Maria most recently, Queen Maria. But that aside, let's just get into the key points right now. If anybody joins later on into this live premiere, feel free to rewind back. I'll probably mention it afterwards. So, the video itself, the interview, how long was it? About 3 minutes long. Bob Farrell wasn't too pleased with it, saying, how short, more could have been talked about. Why was this not mentioned? Why was that not acknowledged, etc. And there might be other people that think that way too. We could even do a poll, possibly, to kick this video off, and, people can vote right now and as we go along, is, based off the most recent interview of Candice Cooley, how satisfied were you with it? What was talked about, the details, the information, the update overall. Were you very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, dissatisfied, strongly or very dissatisfied? Feel free to vote right now. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe, I don't know, maybe by the end I've read this out and I've analysed it, could your thoughts change on the matter? I mean, look back at the Dylan Rounds documentary. As bad as it's been described, when I looked at it, there was some interesting points mentioned which were never brought up beforehand, so there was positives there, right? But anyway, so the interview starts with Candice Cooley and Nate Eaton from East Idaho News. Where are they located? Well, at that moment in time, which is kind of old now, they were at that CrimeCon. Was it in Florida? Was it in California? One or the other, I think. Regardless, Candice Cooley was there just with Nate. No Justin Rounds. Justin Rounds did not attend CrimeCon. Why is that? Is it because he's busy? Is it because he doesn't see the point in attending? Does he not want to be around Candice Cooley? He only is around her when he has to be? Maybe. I'm thinking, when's the last time the pair, well, not exactly pair, but Candice and Justin, hung out for like a formal event, in memory or in acknowledgement to spread the awareness of Dylan Rounds? It might have been that Ron's Tyre and Motorsports barbecue cook-off, or whatever you call it, where they were raising money for that canine dog unit to, the non-profit, the volunteer group, to be able to search and deploy dogs elsewhere, such as in Montana as of recently. That was a success, and they talked about Dylan there. So I guess CrimeCon, it was around the same theme as well, and it'll be brought up shortly by Candice Cooley. So, you got Nate, you got Candice Cooley. I don't know if anyone was going to criticise Candice Cooley for her appearance or whatever. I don't know why. I think some people were criticising Candice Cooley in the past because of how she presented herself in previous interviews. Like, was it necessary? I don't know. But I don't really focus on that. I'm mainly focusing on more so body language and what's being said at the time. And what was said in this most recent update interview by Candice Cooley. Well, first of all, she responded to Nate Eaton's question by saying that the whole point of being here at CrimeCon is to spread awareness of Dylan Rounds' case. Now, you know what the interesting thing is about that? Because for some time, when Candice Cooley has referred to Dylan Rounds, it's been more about, in recent time, in honour of Dylan Rounds' legacy, for Dylan Rounds' legacy, to help others based on Dylan Rounds' legacy. But for the first time in a while, Candice Cooley actually wording it as the Dylan Rounds case, as it stands right now, to keep it going, to spread that awareness, to keep it alive. That's what I found interesting, because for quite some time, it seemed like it went past the phase of searching for Dylan and more so honouring his memory. And whilst it kind of makes sense that, because it seems more than likely than ever before that Dylan is no longer alive, and they've accepted that a while ago. I get that, you're looking back. But besides looking back, you should be moving forwards in trying to search and find Dylan. And I think that was the criticism from other people out there and their viewpoints, interpreting it as Candice Cooley wasn't proactive enough, maybe just in rounds two. They could have been doing more in a space of time, especially with winter time coming up. When winter time comes up, then it means most, or if not all, searches are stopped from there on, because it's not possible to search because of the coldness, the ground being hard, and other weather conditions too, maybe getting stuck or stranded. It's bit problematic, causes more troubles, more people need rescuing than who they're supposed to be trying to find in the first place. We saw it last time, saw it last year, how long it dragged on for. Is it going to be that length of time again or shorter? I don't know, I guess time will tell. But yeah, that was just the way Candice Cooley originally started it off in the interview, to spread awareness of Dylan Rounds' case. And speaking of spreading awareness of Dylan Rounds' case, if Justin Rounds thought that way as well, then technically, in a neutral way, there should be neutral acknowledgement for other people out there who cover this case, more so online, without encroaching on personal land or places of interest in real life. Because if it's done in a formal and somewhat under-controlled way online, by covering it, by keeping the case alive, it's not causing really any issues. It's keeping Dylan Rounds' name up there on the search bar, the Google search terms, the YouTube thumbnails, the algorithm. It's keeping it active for as long as possible. And if that's what Candice Cooley is trying to do in real life, by spreading that message out there, by informing others from different states, towns or cities about Dylan and what's happened to him and what's currently happening or not actively happening, it just helps people understand what's going on. So if they're doing it in real life, then someone like me is doing it online. So it's not that much of a problem. But I can understand it where if there's others out there, channels or viewers that may try and twist the story in an unnatural way, not so genuine, that could be considered problematic. And I guess it comes down to the fact that Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, probably had negative first-hand experiences with YouTubers or certain ones or a certain platform before they came across somewhat decent people. And obviously first time impressions can have a big impact on you. So if you experience a negative thing at first hand, then you're probably going to have maybe a greater negative outlook elsewhere afterwards, which is understandable. I know people can call it generalization, but it's also understandable because you can't help it at times, right? So besides spreading awareness on Dylan's case by Candice Cooley, she also said to help others that are here, that are going through similar stuff or other cases. And I think what she meant by that was to do with Dylan Brown's legacy. It's part of a greater scheme, a greater plan by helping families out there going through similar circumstances, missing person or missing person true crime cases, and trying preventing those families going through what Candice Cooley just in rounds had gone to the hands of the LE or maybe others in the case that have been interfering with time, right? I guess that's what it's mainly about. And I don't know how many people attended CrimeCon, but I'm sure it would have been a fair few. Was it on any YouTube channels? Was there any live streams? If so, then obviously that would be beneficial as for spreading the case further, because at the end of the day, being realistic, you want to spread a message about something, what's more effective? Doing it in real life and having to travel about with a certain limited amount of people present, or simply plastering it online the natural way and, doing it appropriately. And then millions can see it if they choose to, if they want to, and if certain platforms allow it. Because as you know, the algorithm can be very dodgy at times. But I think as for the platform area, whether it be my channel or more so others over time, it's reached people. Even if you want to apply it to East Idaho News, right? Or ABC4 News Utah, or was it Fox 10 News? You look at the view count of those official news reports of Dylan Brown, it's got like 100, 200,000 views. So a fair few people are being informed about it. It seems like, though, more people, the majority of people that do know about Dylan Brown's case only tune in when there are official news reports. Maybe majority of people out there see these videos more amateur and unreliable, but at the end of the day, this is just analysing, right, such as this video, making sense of what's happened recently, putting stuff into perspective, because I said some people can go up the far end in a very negative way, right? And once you go through that negative way, then you don't pick up on the stuff in between the lines. So by me being here doing this video, it might help you as well, okay? So as I said, be sure to share your comments and thoughts, replies down below, and also the live chat box. And if at any point you want to check back on previous videos, feel free to do so. And if you do want to visit any links down below to support the channel if you wish to, they're in the pinned comments section, okay? But that aside, let's move on to the next bullet point. That was just the intro, okay? So Candice Cooley was asked by Nate, what are the updates? What's been going on? It was a vague question. Candice Cooley responded by saying, well, we're just waiting for Jim Brenner's hearing, which is coming October 2nd. Now, take in mind when this was said in that interview, although it was posted yesterday, which is after October the 2nd, you could be confused. Well, don't be. It was uploaded yesterday, the interview, but when it was actually recorded, when the interview was actually conducted, that happened before October 2nd. It happened at the date around CrimeCon, when they were actually at the building, at that place, and hanging out when doing the interview, okay? Hopefully that makes sense to you. So she also mentioned how it's been quite frustrating and annoying in its own right upon everything else, the waiting game, things being dragged out, waiting for Brenner to go to that hearing, because previously it hasn't worked out, has it? It's been a long struggle, and we could say stubbornness or more awkwardness, just messy things going on in the background with the attorneys. 1 minute you got one, next minute they've quit, then there's a second one, then they've quit, and supposedly 2 more have been appointed all of a sudden at the same time. So a bit back and forth. And as we know now, October 2nd is not going ahead. It's been scheduled to November. Now, before I go any further, there is another news article which I will be covering probably tomorrow, right? I didn't want to do it in this video because this is its own thing, right? I didn't want it to get clouded by anything else. So I will be covering the new news article probably tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, okay? Just wanted to point that out. But with what we've heard about the October 2nd court hearing being delayed, postponed, again, if Candice Cooley has already said just before that, anticipating what was coming up, it's already frustrating enough. How do you think she'll be feeling right now? How do you think Justin Rounds will be feeling right now? Because I saw a few comments last night in my video where people were mentioning it, saying, I wonder what she feels like with the recent news. I think she probably will be frustrated. I know some person said because of a continuance that with this being delayed, then it must be for other reasons because there are no more continuances after. I think that's what one of the Montello locals said. Is that entirely true? I guess so. I said I'm not an expert when it comes to law or courts, but you know, for things to be pushed back again, it's not the first time. I think that's the best way of looking at it. It's happened previously. So what do you really expect, right? If you see a pattern, then likely it's going to follow in a certain direction and it could repeat. It could be repeating over and over again. Now, besides how Candice Cooley feels and Justin Rounds, because they're probably going to be annoyed and frustrated yet again, but how does Jim Brenner feel? You know, whilst Jim Brenner could be better off where he is right now instead of being out in the wild, the open, maybe limited resources or more poorer health, where he's at now, he's got accommodation, he's got food, there's a bit more stability in a way, and other people have agreed and said that he's probably better off where he is now than as a free man. So who really is paying the price, right? And I think that's why some wanted the death penalty, because Brenner might be enjoying where he's currently at. But that aside, and besides the environment, how does Brenner feel regarding this hearing, this pending hearing being dragged out? Is Brenner in a situation where he feels like, I'm okay where I'm at, but I do want this court case looming over my head to be over and done with as soon as possible? Well, I think honestly, if he wanted it over as soon as possible, then he probably would have confessed by now, right? That's probably the best way of looking at it. Any other factors? I don't know. But let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think Brenner feels like right now with these hearings being delayed, pushed back? Is he finding it funny? Does he feel he's in control? Does he find it amusing that the family are probably suffering and feeling frustrated out there because of the lack of movement? Let me know down below. But I'm sure universally, most would agree that Candice Cooley and maybe Justin Rounds are both frustrated with what's happening. But at the same time, it's probably not a surprise to them because they've supposedly seen it enough already, right? So just wanted to clear that up in case anyone, you know, hearing at the time thought, well, why is it mentioning October 2nd? That's already gone past by now. It's because this interview took place before October 2nd when CrimeCon event was underway, right? The next point was, she just highlighted as well, Candice Cooley, that the charges on Brenner, the murder and desecration of Dylan Rounds, which occurred 3rd of March 2023, that since then, no arraignment has been done yet. And I guess that arraignment, and correct me if I'm wrong, the arraignment is where you go into the court, you say whether you're guilty or not, the plea, right? And then is that when the court case really goes down and continues after, and that's where it all begins. So the arraignment is at the beginning of the whole court case. Just feel free to correct me down below, as I said. I mean, I've seen like some court videos over time, but I don't like pay attention to all the keywords or the key lines. Sometimes I just watch the court videos to see, you know, the reactions of people. I mean, like when you had the Johnny Depp Amber Heard court case, I think most people were watching that more so for entertainment, I guess. And the fact that it went on for quite some time and it was live streamed, I think most people tuned in to it. whether you're a fan or not, because it was just like what do you call it? Like almost like a public event with it being publicly aired. I mean, the only other court cases or things that I've seen were more compilations of people reacting to being sentenced or receiving a certain punishment or it backfiring on them. Just watching their reaction, whether it turns a bit violent, if they fight back, if they get very verbal. That's really the reason why I've watched them. I don't go as in depth to look at all the bits and bobs in between, right, as maybe other people do. Okay. Would I, though, if it came about to the Dylan Rounds court case, if it ever does come about, maybe. I'll probably break it down a bit more, though. Probably bullet points in like interviews as usual if people prefer it that way. I guess it depends how long the court cases are, or it's all in one go or spread out over time and the length of each one, right? Because I know it can happen over a certain amount of days. I know you had Idaho 4. I've not really looked at that one. I know people have analysed it and they gave their reactions and feedback. With the Dylan Rounds one, I guess it would be recorded, but would it be the full length? Would it be a live stream? You know, who would be uploading it? I guess maybe Glorin Dylan. But when I've seen some of those court cases, about 2 hours, 3 hours long, and whilst I get that, it'd be good if they did like, I don't know, an edited version where you just hear everything from Brenner, his responses, replies, and the key information provided, even a transcript, maybe. Because sometimes with the court cases, you got all the dragged out stuff in between, the people coming and then going, and then things going on in the background. I don't know, sometimes it can be dragged out. I saw it with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case where there was times of pure silence whilst, you know, lawyers or whoever, the judge, were talking in the background. And at the start or at the finish, they were waiting for people to arrive. You know, just like bloatware like that. Take that out and then you just look at the main stuff within. I don't know, maybe it could be a bit time consuming overall. Let me know your thoughts. Do you like watching court cases all the way through from start to finish? Let me know your thoughts down below. But that aside, Candice Cooley was just highlighting, making it bold that months back, that was the last thing that happened. The last bit of breaking news, right? So it puts into perspective, ever since, not much has actually happened. So back then where Candice Cooley said, this is a win, this is like 50% over the line in terms of getting justice for Dylan Rounds, and Justin Rounds agreeing as well. Okay, it's seen as a big win at the time, but then what did it lead to after? Not much. You know, if you were there at the time, which I think most people were, hearing about it, you think, wow, there's stuff going on. And you hear about the phone and that time-lapse video on it as well, or time-lapse photos, whichever way you want to call it. And it's like, okay, so is this where, you know, everything goes down? Is this the catalyst, the turning point within the case, and then it's going to lead to one thing to another? No, that hasn't happened. So it's, you know, I guess been quite disappointing. I mean, in this time of silence, it provided chance and opportunity to think things through without being bombarded with back-to-back information, right? There's no harm in having, you know, time to breathe and to rethink stuff, but it's been going for some months. Now, Candice Cooley did acknowledge and say that, what is it, the state of Utah, or the what do you call it, the legal system is a bit strained, not exactly practical or good. Is it like that with all states in the US? You know, which state in the US has the best legal law system? Just, you know, leave comments down below if you know in general. But that aside, what was the next point Candice Cooley referred to? Well, she said, in quotes, referring to Brenner and the court case, well, more so the court hearing, that Brenner, in her own words, Brenner is not entitled to 2 attorneys because of the death, because of not receiving a death penalty. So he doesn't need 2 attorneys. Do people agree with that? I'm not going to question it too much because I don't really know. Okay, I remember previously it was a bit back and forth with some people back then. I know Glorin Dylan explained it, but I can't remember, right? I just wanted to read that quote out from Candice Cooley. Candice Cooley saying that Brenner is not entitled to 2 attorneys because he's not receiving the death penalty. Okay, and what was the other one? Capital punishment? I think that's the same thing, right? That aside, what was mentioned next? Well, finally, Nate Eaton did ask Candice Cooley about what about the update for the search of Dylan Rounds? Besides the case with Brenner, what about Dylan Rounds' search out there in Lucin, Utah? And Candice Cooley said, well, we've had special searches out there all over summertime. We've had canine dogs, heavy equipment. That's the one that interested me the most. From the perspective of others, and I guess it would apply more to Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly, who are actually out there, who have been searching for Dylan over the summertime. Maybe not as full on as in the past, because take this into perspective, right? Second summertime round. The first summer, for most part of it at least, it was Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly searching together when they were on good terms. Then after, parted ways. This summer, they've been doing their own thing, separate. My question is to you, if certain falling outs never happened back then, if Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly was still, working together and searching for Dylan, would things be better off or not? Would there be a change, a difference or not? Let me know your thoughts down below. I may do this as a poll, just depends if I actually remember to do it, because sometimes we do go through quite a few of them, right? Let me know your thoughts there. I know they parted ways, but if nothing went wrong in the first place and it was all okay, would it have led to any difference? Would it have led to Dylan being found by now, or finding more evidence out there? See, this is the thing. I don't know if people agree with it or not, but there's only so much out there as for evidence. And then eventually there'll be even less, maybe because of factors of weather, weathering, wildlife, scattering items, possibly floods, unearthing, uncovering, but moving things elsewhere, if it's in a wash, right? What are the remaining pieces of evidence that need to be found? I think that's the key question, and I don't know if I'll do this in a separate short video or so to get the discussions going. I guess there's no harm in mentioning it now, and then I can bring it up down the line again, right? So, you acknowledge what's already been found, what's been retrieved. Arguably, the one and most important thing was Dylan's phone with what was found on it, right? Incriminating evidence towards Brenner. That aside, and the boots, and Brenner's shirt, what else has been found, right? And put aside the gun and key fob, because that seems to be back and forth that. What is left to find? Dylan Round's clothes, or part of the clothes, his attire at the time. Dylan Round's wallet, for sure. And Dylan Rounds himself. Backpack, maybe, as well, that needs to be found. Not quite sure about that, because Candice Cooley nor any other person has mentioned it in that way. I saw it by Tom recently, which was passed on from somebody else. So I'm not sure how true that is, and if it was present at the time. But let me know your thoughts down below as to what you think is still out there as evidence that needs to be found. I mean, you could also count as a fifth or sixth option the bin bags from Brenner in his spring cleaning, but I don't know where they could be. If they're nearby, well, they're still up for grabs for being found and searched for, but they've been taken further away, then maybe it's not as much of a high priority, right? As well as the family and special searchers out there conducting finding Dylan Rounds. They're not finding clues anymore, are they? Not really. They're trying to directly find Dylan Rounds' remains. But I think what they should also do in their perspective is acknowledge that any clues, tips, hints, prompts, additional piece of evidence along the way is just as important, because it can be helpful towards the case. It could lead to a new lead. It could just simply put you in the right direction, the right pathway of finding Dylan, right? And that's why I bring the question up. How many more pieces of evidence are out there which could be found while searching for Dylan? Besides Dylan's remains, could you find his wallet? But where would it be? Is it on Dylan Round's body? Or has it been dumped elsewhere, the pond area or further afar? Let me know your thoughts. If there is a backpack, has that been dumped somewhere? Or did someone get a hold of it, chase fenced it or something, and then disposed of it elsewhere? Another question. Any other bits and bobs in between? Well, I said, leave your comments down below as for potential evidence still out there. I mean, as for clothing, you'd think besides the boots, the clothing would remain on Dylan Rounds, right? Does anyone think that Dylan Rounds' clothes might have been taken off? But if so, where were they placed? In the shed? In those bin bags? Were they burnt, dumped, buried somewhere? I'm not quite sure. As for Dylan Rounds' hat, that could still be on Dylan to this day, but I guess just as a suggestion at the time to put it into perspective, when Ty Corbin was out there months ago, when another person called Kayla or Kaylee, but not the Kaylee, the other one, told and informed Ty Corbin, and Ty Corbin informed people on YouTube that a cap, a John Deere one, was found, but the police never reported back or explained anything when they handed it in to the police. So that fell very flat, very dead. Could it have been anyone's cap, hat? Well, yeah. I guess just with it being John Deere branded, bit of a coincidence, I guess. I know it's farming area, rural. You get other people out there, other farmers, ranchers, which be wearing similar hats, caps, clothing, attire. I get that. But it's just looking for these like little possible hints or clues. Now, if it genuinely was Dylan Rounds' hat or cap, right? Where was it? Well, it was away from the pond, and it was nearer to supposedly Don Hatley's place of living, right? So if you use that as a clue or hint, could you suggest that Dylan Rounds could be buried near to Don's place? I don't know. Have any searches been done at Don's trailer besides the police going down in the early days when looking for him or questioning him or just checking the area out, the weapons and stuff? You know what I'm saying? It's private land, so it prevents, I guess, most people from going down there. They don't want to get in trouble. Right. So that factor, that element of not being able to search it, is it wasted potential? Opportunities missed? I mean, if Candice Cooley is strongly in the mindset that, well, maybe not strongly, but is in the mindset that Don Hatley is somewhat innocent and does not play a part, then there'd be no reason to go down there checking it. And if the police have only done it once and they don't take it as serious, then maybe they've not been down there either, right? If there was a deep search and investigation at Brenner's old property back in Montello, Nevada, near the mountainous area, and it was properly, thoroughly searched, then the same should be done at Don's place, right? There's no harm. Don's no longer there. Could there be implications that things might have been moved since? I'm not quite sure. I mean, has the drones been used at Don's place for ground disturbance or anything like that, I wonder? Or there's like gravel pits where Don owns or has used to create pathways or for road usage, vehicle access. Could anything have been buried there, right? It's out of interest. Does it need searching Don Hatley's place of living? Does it need a deep search like Brenner's old property in Montello, Nevada? That can be the poll. Yes, you agree that Don's place needs thoroughly searching, or no, it doesn't need searching either because it already has been and nothing was found, or there's just no chance of Dylan being there, right? As I said, I'm just basing this off such as that John Deere hat being found nearby. Could it be seen as a prompt, a cue, a clue pointing in a certain direction? It was described at the time, though, that it was half buried. Why would it be half buried? Was it an attempt to bury it into the ground to hide it? Or was it because, let's say, at the time of when it was wet, if it was raining and a hat blew off, and the force of it went into the ground slightly, got wedged, and then because the weather elements in the ground being a bit soft, it sunk in slightly, and then was hardened and then was kind of stuck in. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of it naturally. But as I said, evidence out there, whilst it can help the case, it can also at times point you in the right direction. Have we had directional evidence up to now? No. Now, what does it mean by directional evidence? Well, basically what I said earlier. You find an item of interest tied to the case, tied to the victim, the person missing or dead missing, and then it leads you on to a new pathway, and then you find something else, or you find the main thing, which is the remains, right? Directional evidence, most of it has been lost. Directional evidence such as those cadaver dogs or sniffer dogs scents of potential findings, key interest, which were never forensically tested as told by Candice Cooley, which was a missed opportunity there. It could have been one of the burial spots for Dylan if it was temporary. And then it could have led to a starting point and then branching else from there. Nope, that didn't happen. Dylan's truck, that vehicle data, as people like to say, that was lost as well. Where did that end up? Well, it was lost because family member or friend, drove the vehicle, and then, that 100 miles beforehand was gone, game over. And that's a shame now, because that could have been the one key piece of directional evidence which might have, led to going to that final potential spot where Dylan could have been buried. And, if you was able to compare that with, the key hit areas of scents which the dogs had picked up on, you could compare that with the vehicle data, I'm combining that with data and data, compare both together. Does it follow a pattern? Once here and then moved over there? Or does it all link back to one spot? Because there's always that small possibility that even with all that, it might have not, led to finding Dylan by now, but you may have had more chance of it happening, right? So I kind of elaborated a lot more there than maybe what was mentioned in the interview. I think what I want to also acknowledge is that whereas people have been out there searching and stuff, and some may have visited from elsewhere, like tourists, most people have said in the comments and online on my videos that, where are the searchers? What are you talking about? Where have they? No one's been out there. No specialised searchers. Well, this is the thing. Whilst Candice Cooley says they've been searching out there all summer. Yeah, but not every day, right? Maybe once a week or once a month. I'm not quite sure the schedule, but I'm sure they did go out there searching, but maybe not as often as previous summertime. And maybe at certain times of the day, on certain days or weeks where maybe other people are busy, so they're not going to be out there themselves volunteering searching. Like, if you had like Lance Kelly or Ty Corbin, they might not always be out there every single day, every single hour. So the times where they're not actively searching for Dylan because they're busy doing other stuff or just taking care of other responsibilities, whatever that might be the times where Candice Cooley, groups, whoever are out there searching. And it also depends where they're searching as well. If they're still focusing on a wash or the wash, then they're going to be lower down in the ground because of the depth. So if you're on ground level at a distance and you're walking along searching yourself, if you're Lance Kelly, and you're also reporting back saying, I can't see much going on, well, I mean, like, you're not going to see anything. But if people are in the wash, it's a bit of a blind spot, right? That's just a suggestion, okay? You're talking of distance. But I think, I don't know if it's far to say, maybe 98, 99% of people reporting back from being out there at a point in time, regardless of who it is, have said that they've not seen anybody else searching at that moment, right? The only time where it was brought up and acknowledged was way back at the start, where you had Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly searching, I think, along the railroad tracks and up to the border outline of Lucin, Utah, or at least Dylan's farm area, or more so the grain shed property, one or the other. your defence and everything, quite a bit of distance, but they could see and acknowledge that over there, that's where the police were at, search is underway, things happening. They acknowledged it. But besides that, all the other times where you've seen the footage by Lance Kelly, Ty Corbin, or maybe Arizona Traveller, the one obsessed with fake hair. I don't know why, it's probably because they've gotten on themselves, but that aside, and then other people with time, you've not seen it in their own footage saying, oh look, there's another searcher over there, there's police over there, there's Candice Cooley just in rounds. That's never really been mentioned or acknowledged because they've just not come across it at the time. But I still think that there probably have been searches officially. They've been private, so people haven't been informed of when they're happening or where they're occurring at. I think some stuff has gone on out there, maybe just not as often as you would think. That's all I'm saying, okay? Was there anything else to acknowledge? Well, yeah, the same that canine dogs have been used once again. Well, it's good to see. The canine dogs, probably the same ones used the last time before winter in 2022. Obviously, that's useful there because dogs are just very useful. But then when it said heavy equipment, what did it mean by heavy equipment? A backhoe, a digger, an excavator, an ATV? What exactly? Heavy equipment operated by who? They're saying that special searches have taken place. Candice Cooley mentioned way back in the past that coming this summer, as a speaking back then, that it was like ex-military, elite people. Sounded very, secretive and special ops. Well, it's not really led to anything, has it? So let me know your thoughts down below to what you think Candice Cooley was referring to as heavy equipment. I mean, I'm just thinking excavator, backhoe. But where would it be used? And why would you need heavy equipment? To dig a hole? Most likely. To unearth something. To look for where Dylan Rounds could be buried at. So that's in their mindset. Would you be using heavy equipment if you was exploring mines, caves? Probably not. You wouldn't be able to really fit it in. If you had a big mine, an opening, then yeah, you'd probably get some kind of heavy equipment in there. If you're thinking of that mining drill which rotates around, but I don't think it's gone to that length or depth here. I think maybe it's for ground level or more so in a wash. But if that's really the case, wouldn't there be ground disturbance? So I don't know. Could there ever be any crossed lines of confusion? Right? If you've got Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, and whoever else doing their own specialised searches with their own resources and people reaching out to them, and it's all private, so outsiders and others don't know of when it's happening or where, let's just say it goes underway, they've done what they've done, they've dug up an area, they've cleared something, they've left track marks behind, or there's been activity in the wash, and then they've moved on. And then the likes of Lance Kelly or Ty Corbin come on in who have not been informed about these private searches, right? And then they suddenly come across track marks or ground disturbance. Is someone like Lance Kelly then going to say, oh, look, we've got some track marks here. Someone's been removing Dylan's body, or, someone's been trying to search themselves. I wonder what's going on here. Well, there's a few bone fragments as well. I wonder if that's from Dylan. Would it lead to misunderstandings, which then leads to creating an inner mystery when there isn't one? That's why sometimes communication is needed, but at the same time, sometimes communication is not required. I think at the end of the day, it's a lose-lose situation. You inform people of what's happening, and when it's happening, it can be interfered with by outsiders, but it does remove the suspicion and mystery factor, as if in a different situation, you didn't tell anyone, so nothing was contaminated or corrupted by outsiders, but then when outsiders come along afterwards, they misinterpret it and then think it's something else, and then it just makes a more of a mystery out of the case than it really is. Pros and cons to everything, right? So just let me know your thoughts down below as for these specialised searches. Do you really think that we're special? Do you really think that these key resources like heavy equipment were truly used? And list examples down below, right? Sometimes the usage of equipment can highlight or suggest what's really going on, or possibly hint at the location they've been searching in. The other thing Candice Cooley referred to regarding these searches was focusing on Dylan Round's RTT data location. Is that just to do with the phone pings? If so, then what Candice Cooley is referring to is focusing on the Grangeshed property and around there and the pond, because that's mainly where the phone pings were at. Now, if what Corey says, it's more so to do with the radius, like a 15.4 mile radius, well then you're basically looking at most of Lucin, which just seems a bit vague then. The way Candice Cooley worded it at least was, we're just working with what we have, which is limited. We're looking at the data locations of Dylan Rounds. And we've seen the phone pings, as the story has been told, not just from Candice Cooley, but also Mob Crew Chris, that did his own little, timeline and map analysis, right? So we're taking that into mind. Why is that a problem? Well, Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds have said previously that they've double-checked the pond, ticked off the list. Double-checked the Grangeshed property, ticked off the list. Double-checked Dylan's farm, mainline, ticked off the list. And have done it many times. There's no need to look back there. And yet, in this interview, Candice Cooley said they're basically the locations we're looking at. That could be interpreted as a bit of desperation. Constantly searching places you've already searched and not finding anything. But the only thing that motivates you to keep going on back is with the limited evidence you have. Whereas in actual fact, there were other opportunities out there but never were taken up on. So kind of in an endless cycle loop, which is unfortunate. When will it, or if it gets to the point where Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, one or both, end up getting to that point where they're like, do you know what? There's no hope. There's no chance. We have to reach out to Brenna. Will that ever happen or not? I know some people are saying that by the time something happens, it'll probably be too late. Brenna will pass away because of age or health reasons. But besides the death factor, do you think the family will ever reach out to Brenna in the future, or is that long gone by now? And even if they did, it's not to say that Brenna would be willing to open up. He could be stubborn all of a sudden because he was rejected in the past. So it could be a messy situation there. Anything else to mention? Well, Candice Cooley just basically said that, as I mentioned before, that these searches over summertime have been kept private to avoid the crazy people getting involved. Now, who's Candice Cooley referring to by the crazy people out there? Well, basically, Candice Cooley is referring to more so Ty Corbin and Lance Kelly, and possibly Salty Pancakes as well, because he's been out there too. Why would I say that, though? Did Candice Cooley mention any of those names? Well, in this interview, no. But in past interviews, most definitely. Which one was it? Was it Law and Crime, Crime and Order? It was one of the more official news channels where Candice Cooley was basically saying how. And I think it was a solo interview as well in her own house, possibly. She was saying how, I'm sick of these people out there, the likes of Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly, these crazy people that keep going out and they won't listen to us when we say not to go out there or something. She said crazy people, then Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly's names. I do remember that. It has been documented on my channel in the past. I'm sure some of you will remember that. Are Lance Kelly, Ty Corbin crazy people? I don't know, because I don't really fully know them, right? But Candice Cooley does not like, setting aside what Justin Rounds may think, Candice Cooley doesn't like Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly, etc. and YouTubers, most YouTubers, because they've been out there searching where Candice Cooley has said, we don't want public searches. And whilst the general public may think, well, that seems a bit, ineffective. You want as many people out there searching as possible? I guess so, yeah. But because they didn't follow the family's or part of the family's wishes, it was seen as disrespectful, and that's what annoyed Candice Cooley. I personally think that there's no harm in having public searches at all hours, all times of the day. Maybe not. Maybe early on, or more so later, where it feels like there's no hope. a big boost in public searches, volunteer groups and stuff like that. It's helpful, it's more time efficient, it can be more successful. But I think if it got to a point where they came across some sensitive findings or a very important location of interest, then maybe that's where searches should be then scaled back. Does that make sense? It's kind of like if you had a load of people out there, then they came across an archaeological excavation site, and before everyone jumping on it, it was like, right, we found this, and then the family or I don't know, someone out there of importance or who are linked with this location then say, right, we'll take it from here. Thank you for what you've all done. Can you please step back? We need to have a deeper look now. I'd get that. Would people still see that as disrespectful or not? I'm interested. I don't know what people think about that. As I said, public searches are useful and helpful, but then comes to a moment where it's like, maybe it's now time to step back and then let the officials, the professionals, take over from there. But all that was done beforehand should be acknowledged as well and not just brushed under the rug, right? I think other people have criticised Candice Cooley for their public announcement in the past of, we want public searches to be called off for now. And does that apply still to this day? I guess so. Because Candice Cooley and whoever has been doing their own specialised public searches out there. But it's not exactly been successful, so what does that really say? Let me know your thoughts down below. So, that was basically the interview. Take in mind that interview was 3 minutes long. This video is almost 1 hour long, which is a bit interesting. I don't think I've ever done that before. I mean, I turned a 20-second clip into, what was it, a 45-minute video talking about underpants. It was a finding in the desert to do with the missing person, Kenny Veach. Scott Nuttall found those pants. I forgot about that finding. But I just wanted to provide context because for such a short interview, all this time of waiting and silence, to then hear that from Candice Cooley, which could be considered very vague and not rich enough in information, I just wanted to add on myself, so then it fills it out for you. And it gives you more time to share your thoughts and opinions about it. Now, with that all being said, maybe we can add on and look at the reactions from people in the comment section of that interview video right now. Well, here are the comments. I'm going to adjust it to the latest, and whilst we look through them, I guess there's no harm in seeing if there's any key people that show up here. Do you know any key characters, names, those from this channel or other communities out there that have engaged and contributed with the case in some way or another, whether it be whingers, whiners, or somewhat normal people? First of all, we've got Kirsten saying, thanks, Nate. Then we got Joanne. Candice Cooley sending you and your family prayers. Truth and Justin, your son from Australia. You got Vanita saying, how about using cadaver dogs, also known as cadaver dogs? See what the response is. They have tried that. So, there's the first response from Jim Terry. Right. Well, we'll read out anyway, because I think Jim Terry did leave a few comments on this video, which is kind of a bold thing to do in a way, because he's not done it for quite some time, right? And you could be wondering, is this Jim Terry, the real Jim Terry? Yes, this is one of his alternative accounts. One account that did not get terminated because I guess it was under a different email address at the time, right? So he still has access to YouTube regardless. Right. I mean, to respond back to this question, they have used cadaver dogs. So, you know, those canine dogs, I assume they're cadaver dogs. Well, there must be. There would have to be, because if this is to search for Dylan Round's remains, which, you know, that they're likely thinking, and I've acknowledged, then you'd need those dogs for that specific job. And it was mentioned in the interview where Candice Cooley said canine dogs and heavy equipment. So they have done Vanita. Now, let's see Jim Terry's response from 15 hours ago. Jim Terry says, Candice Cooley has only been out in the search area one time when they were shooting a TV show months ago. She told people not to search and took the reward off for anyone who finds anything. She could have had tons of press if she was willing to tell the truth about his life out there as a 17-year-old. She spent more time this summer drinking in her front yard and watching football than searching for her son. She spent more time in Orlando drinking than looking for her son. Now she has burned tons of truck drivers she owes money to and is looking to ride the wave of press that she won't get because the press TV stations owned outside the LDS church see right through her. She has been in the news and could have cut a deal months ago to have the killer tell her where her son is, but then her free ride to Orlando and on YouTube would be over and back to work at Costco. I bet he dies in jail, Brenner, and that kid is never found. 16 months later, where he in charge and they don't have sheep. Right. So Jim Terry doesn't make much sense at the very end with his poor wording. Anyway, we can analyse this comment afterwards because I think Jim Terry did spam it a few times, which is very common. Anyway. Ronnie, we love you, Candice Cooley. Joanne, Truth and Justice, praying for the family from the UK. Oh, another person from the UK. So far, I've not seen any of these people before. We got Brenda. I've seen Brenda before. A Brenda did pop up in my chat once, but I don't know if it's the same person. They say, my heart breaks for Candice, the family for the trauma they're enjoying. I wish for Dylan's return, justice and peace. I see their text is in bold from all the other comments. That's interesting. Nada. I've seen Nada before, I believe, on my channel. They're saying, what a despicable man Jim Brenner is, not to reveal Dylan's whereabouts so Candice and family can bring him home and family lay him to rest. There's nothing worse or more painful than losing a child, other than losing your child and not being able to bring them home and laying them to rest. Much love and prayers to Candice and all Dylan's family and friends. May God wrap you in his loving arms and give you strength and protection always. Few responses there, we'll see. This person here, loved your thoughts, prayers. Coupon therapy. Is that Shack Lady? No coupons. Right. Coupon says, I have not let one day go by without praying and looking for updates. May God lead you in the right direction and put all the right people and things in your path to get Dylan back quickly. I hate to say it, but it's the only leverage Brenner has when it comes to trial and he finds out what his sentence is. Now saying, the really pathetic, sad thing about Dylan's death is the fact that if Brenner had been in prison where he belonged after multiple felony convictions, Dylan would probably still be alive and happily farming. That's a fair point, that pending 2021 aggravated assault. Now it says, seriously, how many felony convictions for assault, malicious wounding, which sounded like attempted murder to me, Illinois? Who knows? Malicious firing of a firearm and multiple convictions for being a felon in possession of firearms. Does it take for law enforcement, prosecutors and judges to finally say enough is enough and sentence a person to life for protection of the public? But this is the thing. Even if Brenner was caught up quicker with that pending thing in 2021, and that Brenner served his time in prison, probably not for life, but for a few years, Dylan Rounds would be happily farming for then. But what about the future? What about down the line? If Dylan Rounds was still alive to this day and Brenner was arrested earlier on, eventually, once Brenner is let out and Dylan's doing his farm work, likely it would have been the inevitable that Brenner would still have killed Dylan down the line, just would have delayed it longer. That's my thoughts. Let me know if you agree down below. So really, if Brenner was to be arrested more so towards the start of 2022 or way back in 2021, it has to be for life to ensure Dylan's survival. I don't know if anyone else would chip in and say, well, someone else could finish the job instead. But it's just like a different outlook. So there we go. We got Ranch Queen. Someone needs to look into the judicial system in Utah like they did in South Carolina. Michelle, truth and justice for Dylan. Oh, we got Bob Farrell 19 hours ago. What does Bob say? You're not out there. Haven't been out there since last year. Justin Rounds, his father, has been out there. You're a liar, Candice Cooley. How many does that make it now? 5,000 lies? Well, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, that, but I kind of get that. Now, if Candice Cooley hasn't been out there, and she's lied about it, but Justin Rounds has been out there, where's the proof to suggest that Justin has been out there? Have you been in contact, Bob, with Justin Rounds, or has it been passed about in the background? There must have been some communication going on in the background to be acknowledged that Justin has been out there himself personally, right? Because this is the thing. There's been certain occasions where Candice Cooley has been out there. Jim Terry says Candice Cooley has only been out there once, and that was for the documentary, but that's incorrect as well. But I'll try and clear things up shortly, so make sure to stick around. Ninth generation, heartbreaking. We got June. I've seen June recently on my channel. June says, I've never heard of a family wanting to keep their searches private and discouraging searches to look for a missing person. I'm not following this thinking of hers at all. Then we get Jim Terry's comment once again. And some by John saying, wow, really, I've always thought there was more to this case when it began said. A lot of the things she says just doesn't sound right, and she's complaining about so much stuff with the police and legal system, but that is just how it works. She was throwing a fit that they didn't charge Brenner when they knew he did it, but the police didn't know he did it for sure. And he was also in jail for other crimes, and there was no need to move fast and mess up the case. Right. We'll get back to Jim Terry's comment shortly. Rondell. Wait, is that the Rhonda that was on my channel in the past? I'm not too sure. If it is Rhonda, feel free to leave a comment down below. Amy, I applaud East Idaho News for keeping this story alive. Yep, and as well, the other channels out there that keep it alive on a day-to-day basis. Money saying justice for Dylan. I keep hoping and praying that they'll find Dylan. Deborah saying, I've been waiting so long to hear about Dylan. I'm so sorry so badly. I'm sorry for Candice Cooley and the family. Followed this case since the beginning. So sad and over the loss of Dylan. He had so many dreams. Unrealised. Frank, this is ridiculous. Dylan is not getting any justice. Why? And why isn't it national news? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. Continue to hope Dylan be found. Followed this case from the start and share frustration. Thanks for the update. Yeah. Oh, another comment by Jim Terry. So it's like 3 comments now by Jim Terry. I think we get the point. Mrs. Henderson, has a murder of any case, hot, cold, or contemplating doing bad things ever been found going to CrimeCon convention? Would be nice for families to have him caught so they have peace of mind. Long trip. Hey, Candice Cooley. Utah seems to be pro... Okay. I don't know about that. Right, I've not really seen anybody else here who are now. Not giving up. Don't lose hope. Prayers. Justice for Dylan. Said, yeah. Shame on all the people who accused the parents of being the culprits, by Violet. And Catherine, another Catherine. I think the reason Brenner's arraignment has taken so long to happen is that it's because without Dylan's body, even with the evidence they have in Dylan's cell phone, it isn't enough to prove Brenner is guilty of Dylan's murder. We all know Brenner is 100% guilty of Dylan's murder. But for the state of Idaho to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, it's going to take more evidence. And Brenner knows this hopefully soon. Candice and her family will get a conviction, but it's going to take more time and evidence. Does anyone agree with that? But it's because of the remains not being found. That's why everything's been delayed and pushed back. Let me know if you agree down below. Let's just refer back to Jim Terry's comment. I guess we need to make it a bit more realistic, right? How would we do that? Well, I've just got to put on a little bit of a voice. And I can't remember how to do this. You know, the original was, Betty Hayward, where you at? I'm gonna tell you something. You need to listen to me. I'm going to call you 24/7. That's the alternative one. But this other one is a bit more of a strange voice, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Jim Terry.
I told you so. She's been out in the search area one time when they were shooting a TV show months ago. She told people not to search and took the reward off for anyone who finds anything. So she could have tons of press if she's willing to tell the truth about his life and that her 70-year-old. She spent more time this summer drinking in front of the yard, watching football than searching for her son, more than me. She spent more time in Orlando drinking than looking for her son. Now she's burnt tons of truck drivers she owes money to. They were looking to wait around the press like she won't get in because press TV stations are outside LDS church and see right through her. Even Tyler Feller does the same thing and we paid him. We gave him all the money because of our presence. You look at the stats, you look at no thanks, without it there'd be nothing. Anyway, let me talk to you. She's been in the news. She could have cut a deal months ago and tell the killer to tell her where his son is. But a free ride to Orlando and YouTube would be over and back to work at Costco. I bet he dies in jail, the kid is never found. 6 months later, where is charged and they don't have shit. They don't have shit. Fuck you. Beep, beep, beep. So I had to censor this and that because you know what YouTube's like. Now, apologies if anyone has been deafened by that. It's unfortunate, I know. Irish. Wow. Where's your proof? Well, there we go. So, what do I have to say about this comment? So, I'm going to analyse it. Well, I'm going to analyse some of it at least whilst I've got it on screen because it's easier to look back at, okay? Jim Terry states Candice Cooley has only been out there in the search area one time for the TV show. Now, was it really a TV show or more so a documentary? I think other people with it as a docu/something hybrid type of thing. Right. Is that entirely true? Well, Bob Farrell's saying that Candice Cooley has been out there but last year and has done nothing since. Jim Terry is saying that she's only been out there once and that was it and nothing else. Who's right, who's wrong? Well, Jim Terry is incorrect, most definitely, on the first point mentioned. Candice Cooley has been out there more than one time, whether it be directly searching for Dylan or just simply being out there in the search area. She has been out there more than once. Where's the proof? You look on YouTube, you look at the videos there, you look at the news reports, right? And now you can acknowledge and say, well, she's there because the camera crew is as well. Is that what was mentioned by Justin Rounds in the past as well? I guess so. I think Justin Rounds said whenever the cameras or the video crew shows up, then Candice Cooley appears. That was a reference Justin made himself back then. Justin Rounds seems like more of the type of guy to be less on camera, more off camera, more getting the hands dirty and being more physical and active and proactive. Candice Cooley seems to be the opposite, but at least from the documented recording pieces of evidence to prove that Candice Cooley has been out there more than one time, you look back at Heavy D's original video. So they're in Luton, Utah. Heavy D flies on over, does that flyby and everything, also has that like little conversation, talk with Candice Cooley and Candice's boyfriend, if that's the status at the time, talking it through, what they know of back then. We analysed it recently when looking back retrospectively. So Candice Cooley, her husband, Justin Rounds as well, and a group of other guys and people were out there in the desert area when in the initial start of where it all begun, June 2nd or so, all out there, Heavy D as well, flyby over, it's documented, Candice Cooley out there in the search area. So that counts, that's number one. Any others? Well, you would have had some in between, but I can't remember all them. The other one later was when Heavy D, once again, and his friend went on down with that drone, the full spectral drone, when they were flying and operating it within the area. Candice Cooley was there, Justin Rounds was there, and they were cooperating with Heavy D, who was able to pilot that drone in order to take photos of the area for ground disturbance and then to pass that on to Texas EquuSearch elsewhere to then analyse it You remember? And Justin Rounds mentioned how analysing is going on in the background, but we, as the people, never heard an update regarding it, which was kind of strange. Never an update, never referenced ever again about drones and soil disturbance and photos being analysed. Very odd that. But they were out there and they were operating the drone. It was also documented on the news channel as well of them being out there as proof. Then the other time was the big push, the big search for Dylan Rounds, looking in the Wash area and further afar, which was in 2022, just before winter time. Was it in August or past that point? I'm not quite sure, but it was just before winter time kicked in, where all the searches were delayed. That's why they wanted to get it in before that. That consisted of Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds. It consisted of Mob Crew Chris, K9 Unit, Texas Equisearch, and your police, sheriff, deputy, whatever you call it. Is there any proof of that? Well, not by the news programmes officially, but Mob Crew Chris recorded it himself of them being out there. And photos were also published on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page of them being out there and pointing out directions and stuff to Texas Equisearch. We've analysed those photos on my channel previously, okay? So about 2 to 3 times Candice Cooley has been out there, and maybe more so in between, but I'm just referring to ones that have actually been documented with proof and evidence and stuff what we have seen ourselves back then, right? The other time where Candice Cooley was supposedly out there, whether it be with Justin or not, was May 21st. 21st of May, which I think was on a Sunday of 2023. Now, nobody mentioned it except me. And it came from the Find Dylan Brown's Facebook page, where some member said, oh, I was out there nearby the pond and I saw some people nearby as well as a police guy. And then Candice Cooley responded saying, yes, that was us who were out there on the day. It's got nothing to do with Dylan Round's anniversary or something, she said. But we were out there. Police deputy sheriff got there 1 hour earlier. And then we came after. What was actually happening? Was that to do with filming for the documentary? I don't know. It was never documented in photos or anything like that. So maybe it was a specialised background thing going on. What about more so in recent time? What about when Lance Kelly came across that convoy of vehicles the second time round and he ended his live stream? What was that all about? Was that to do with a specialised search going on out there and he had to cut the video because he didn't want to publicly reveal those private searches going on? I don't know exactly, but all in all, Candice Cooley has been out there in the search area more than once, for definite. And it's been proven with evidence. You can argue and say Candice Cooley has not been out there enough, but she has definitely been out there more than once. So Jim Terry has made a mistake here, and his statement is invalid regarding that point. Okay? Was there anything else to refer back to here? She told people not to search and took reward off for anyone who finds anything. Well, that's incorrect, Jim Terry. Based off Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds were talking. Also Candice Cooley, which I know you could criticise in its own right. But the reward money was withdrawn, along with Heavy D's reward money, which was given back to Heavy D also. Why in the first place? Well, why was reward money put there in the first place? Let's look at that. Well, like any other case out there, it's to encourage, to entice people to speak up, to reveal the location, to reveal some truth in the matter, right? Although it seems bad that you have to pay for a possible successful result in finding your own missing son, daughter, it's just how it goes. Is it always successful? No, not really. But you take in mind that the reward money originally was about, what was it, $5,000 or $25,000? Candice Cooley wanted it to go up to $50,000, but Justin Rounds, in charge of the money at the time, said, no, we'll raise it to $100,000. Not much happened. And then Heavy D came on in and said, we'll double it 200,000. Did it lead to anything at all? No. So realistically, what is the point having reward money up for grabs and even increasing it when nobody speaks up? Nobody comes out with key intel. The only time when that happened was in the early days when the $25,000 reward money was put up, and then in line with that, you had Kurt Wadsworth calling in about, hostage situation in Montello. That's where Dylan's at. Was it an opportunistic move to try and get that money? Maybe. Or is it more so a decoy? Possibly that. Or could be both, right? And Candice Cooley said in the early days in between, there was other people saying that Dylan Rounds was held hostage in Mexico and money had to be exchanged, which was a scam in the end, etc. So you can kind of understand that when money is up for grabs, some people can get desperate and they might rush things and give false information in hopes that they get the money. Opportunistic behaviour, of course, like a pack of hyenas. And then some people will genuinely come out with information and they'll also be rewarded at the same time. But that just didn't happen in this case. So really, what is the point having money sitting about? What is the point? What if it doesn't lead to Dylan being found? Can't that money be used for other things in between? Maybe. Did they need to use that money for other stuff in between? Because they were lacking it, I don't know, the funds, possibly. But that's why money was withdrawn, because it didn't lead to a successful positive result. So there's no point it standing about, right? And if Justin Rounds was in control of the money, as Candice Cooley stated, then I guess it was Justin Rounds' decision, or at least had the final say in withdrawing the money as well, if he's the one that put it out in the first place. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think the way Jim Terry has worded this is a little bit incorrect, okay? A little bit poorly worded, to be fair. Anything else? She could have had tons of press if she was willing to tell the truth about his life out there as a 17-year-old. So I think Jim Terry is hinting at that about Dylan Rounds being gay and having gay relationships with people out there like Kurt Wadsworth, and also getting in trouble with the police or so in 2021. I believe that's what Jim Terry is referring to. But you say Candice Cooley had tons of press if she opened up about the dirty laundry, the dark secrets of Dylan or so. I mean, that past stuff with Dylan Rounds, in the past, what Dylan Rounds was doing or getting up to, it could have, depends how people react to it, could have led to press coverage. But the fact that there was no press coverage to begin with, no official press releases like that, which Candice Cooley wanted, would it have really made much of a difference? And even if it did, that past stuff by Dylan, of Dylan, would it have led to him being found by now? It might have led to more awareness on the case, but, if the key resorts back to Brenner, knowing the location, then really, it doesn't matter how much awareness you spread. If there's one person who has the key to finding out the truth, then that's all you should be really focused on, besides all the other background stuff. But as it Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, haven't really been focused on that as much because they turned it down. Anyway, anything else? Spent more time this summer drinking in front yard and watching football. So that's referring to Candice Cooley. Is that true? I think basically what Jim Terry is referencing here is those times in the past where Candice Cooley has appeared in one of the Fox 10 News or ABC4 News Utah shows from YouTube. She's been interviewed in her own house, sat on that massive chair, which makes her look like a dwarf, but it's just because it's the chair itself, not her. And she said, I've got football on later, I better get a move on. And I think that was mentioned on Doug's interviews in the past as well, where Candice Cooley was saying, football's on in the background, I best hurry. So I guess you could argue one has their priorities set straight, which might not be for the right reasons, but I mean, to be fair, obviously a different scenario, but for Jim Terry to call Candice Cooley out for spending too much time watching football and stuff, well, Jim Terry himself has spent time watching football and participating in it. Arena football and other stuff as well, American football. You say in the past, Jim Terry's live streams, I gotta go now, got football on soon, gotta scram. So, call someone out for doing it and they did it themselves. It's, I know, a bit hypocritical in a way. But I can understand that in the situation of Candice Cooley, who's the mother of the missing son, that she could be putting more things above football by finding and searching. Might be that initial thought by Jim more driven by the fact that Justin a bit more hands-on in searching, like how Bob Farrell has stated, that if Justin is willing to forgo other activities to put Dylan at the top of the list or as high as possible, then Candice Cooley should do the same thing. And that because supposedly that isn't the case, then it makes Candice Cooley look bad. It makes some people interpret it as she doesn't care. So I'm just balancing it out as we go along, okay? She spent more time in Orlando drinking than looking for her son. Now she has burned tons of truck drivers she owes money to, as we've heard in the past referenced, and people saying, you owe me money, this person put me out of business, etc. How true is it? I mean, it's followed a certain pattern. People coming out talking about it, and some referencing it on my channel, others on other videos, most of it on Jim Terry's side, etc. What does it ultimately lead to, though? Is there a resolve there? I don't know. Anything else? LDS Church, the religion factor there. And I think that's tying in with the gay theory as well, previously in the past. Jim says, she has been in the news and could have cut a deal months ago to have the killer tell her where her son is. But then her free ride to Orlando on YouTube would be over and back to work. Well, that free ride to Orlando, as of speaking around March 3rd, 2023, when it all unfolded. From then till now, there was no acknowledgement that Orlando, a trip out there, was in the making that far back. So I don't think Candice Cooley would have been thinking that far ahead. But, what Jim Terry says here is basically what I've already said in the past. Jim Terry is a little bit slow here in leaving this comment. Jim Terry trying to analyse it is a bit slow. But don't worry, I've got it under control because I did talk about it at the time when it was fresh, when it came out at the time, basically saying, and I actually updated it as well, right? Because at the time when it was mentioned by Candice Cooley, analysing it, making sense of it, why would you choose that option? What could have happened if a different approach came about by the family? And then came up with part 2 follow-up of, acknowledging why Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds decided to turn the offer down. And what was mentioned was they wanted to find Dylan themselves. They didn't want to make a deal with the devil. And also they didn't want any chance of Brenner having a lessened sentence, because if he is released in the future, it could impact and harm other families out there. So basically, in short, Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds were too proud in finding their own son, who's gone missing, and too stubborn to make a deal with the devil. That conflict of interest has led to things being delayed, and I've analysed that excessively over time, and more so recently, I also acknowledged that Justin Rounds himself also played a role as well. Besides everyone calling out Candice Cooley for turning down the offer, Justin Rounds did the same exact thing, because Justin did not step up. Justin didn't go behind Candice Cooley's back and accept the offer, but at the same time, in that interview, back then Justin said, I hope Brenner doesn't talk. I hope he doesn't reveal the location of our son, because we want to find him ourselves. So it's pretty clear there to follow, right? Anything else mentioned here? Kid. Right, so Jim Terry says, I bet Brenner dies in jail and that kid will never be found. So how does Jim Terry come across in the Dylan Rounds case as of right now, or more so in recent time? Back in the past, Jim Terry, the private investigator hired by the grandparents, Dylan Rounds, then eventually fired by the likes of Candice Cooley and maybe Justin, at points at times, whether they have made up and, been on okay terms, moments where Justin Rounds had called out Jim Terry as a coward, as it's been documented from Facebook, an official post by Justin, on and off there. But the initial beginning, right? Jim Terry, private investigator, hired by them to help in locating, finding Dylan Rounds. Was Jim Terry successful in finding Dylan Rounds? No. Jim Terry failed to find Dylan Rounds more so because Jim Terry did not have the chance to do much, right? But because of that friction, that tension, conflict of interest, certain thoughts and alignments not matching up, that tension, conflict parted ways, right? And then that started off that bitterness, that long-standing grudge between the two, or one-sided, whichever way you look at it. And ever since, Jim Terry has done videos, shows about Dylan Rounds, but not entirely about the case. But Jim Terry has always referred back to it or made references directly to the family involved, Dylan Rounds case, background info, groundbreaking news, or anybody else involved in trying to solve the case or make sense of it. Jim Terry has been very critical at times of other people that cover this case and a bit whingy and whiny. Very impetuous alongside Mr. Impetuous, also known as X, but it is what it is. That's just their personality and behaviour. But the point what I'm trying to get across here is what's mentioned here by Jim Terry himself seems a bit of a defeatist mindset. You know, you have such an elite mentality, a winning mentality. This is the complete opposite. Like giving up. Oh, well, no, that's it. Over and done with. And it all comes back to where you once started and why are you still here, right? And there's a shift over time. Now, let's just use me as a comparison. I came in to cover the case, to make sense about it, to learn about it too, to analyse, compare, contrast, and maybe find things along the way, like I did previously with the other case. Was I the golden beacon in finding Dylan? No, never said that. I under-promised, but at times over-delivered. That's how it is. Now, if Jim Terry was hired originally to help find Dylan, but then got fired, well, short-lived. But then for Jim Terry to then continue afterwards covering the case at times and supposedly finding new evidence or groundbreaking material, what was the purpose and point of it? To help find Dylan Rounds? To keep the case alive? Or just to expose people within the case? What was the exact motive there? And then to go here and leave a comment most recently by Jim Terry saying, I bet that kid will never be found. Well, that's very positive. Not. And whilst, yes, it could be being realistic based off the circumstances, you know, it would be the family at fault for not following up on stuff at the right time, so then it does lead to Dylan not being found and other things not being done properly, and the lack of searches out there by some, well, you're not going to find Dylan, and the longer it goes on for, the less likely it becomes. But that's still seen as a negative outlook on the case, right? I know some people are very delusionally positive at times. That doesn't help either. You want to try and be in the middle. One of the hardest things to do, right? But what I'm trying to get at here, for Jim Terry way back at the start, to be trying to assist in finding Dylan Rounds, without Jim Terry himself ever going out there himself, right? For Jim Terry to call out family members for not being out there enough, well, Jim Terry has never been out there himself, so just to take that into perspective, to go from helping solve the case, then to go to covering intel and information, to what cost, to what degree, to what outcome, Dylan's not found still, then to say he's never going to be found. It's a bit of a decline in Jim Terry's mentality, in a sense. As said, if Jim Terry at the start was just along the lines of, I'm here to cover the case, to make sense of it, just to spread awareness, do what I can with what I've got and the contacts I have, and then go from there. And then it's like, well, I notice it's not quite working out. I can identify that with certain family members and the way they're responding and treating me and background things. Yeah, it seemed like a lost cause, the end. But because Jim Terry, over time, has presented himself in such a way that he is the one who's provided the most context, the most findings, the most evidence, resolving the case in certain areas, proving points, always being correct or mostly being correct, predicting this, predicting that, right? At least theories in the background and it coming true, right? Jim Terry, known as Mr. Right. Well, what did it lead to, right? It just seems like such fragmentation from The mentality of how they see themselves, portray themselves to what's mentioned here, a defeatist attitude. It's kind of weak, in a sense. As I said, it all depends how you interpret it at the end of the day. There could be resistance from this, but it's just being realistic and straight to the point. Now, me personally, do I feel that Dylan Rounds will never be found? Well, the way I explained it, and I've mentioned it in other ways too, it all comes down to certain conditions. And once again, most humans out there fail to provide, context behind what they say, right? And that can apply to Jim Toy as well at times. What I was saying and suggesting was, based on certain circumstances, depending how it goes, that can alter the chances of finding Dylan's remains. So the longer time drags on, the weather, the changes in that, the wildlife, that can make it harder to locate Dylan because things could get displaced, moved about, or damaged possibly. A bit of wear and tear with certain items, right? I was mentioning the last one about the court case, how if it's just going to keep being delayed and delayed and delayed, then likely it's going to go right into the next year, if not longer. And based off patterns of what we've previously seen, it's probably going to happen again. So maybe November time, that will be delayed. And if that's delayed, then that's probably it for the rest of the year and onwards, right? You'd have to look back at previous videos. I'm sure there's many witnesses here that have heard when I've made predictions. And often when I've made predictions, it's been on the condition of that outcome, which leads to this. And if that condition is not met, then something else will happen. You know what I mean? It gets kind of technical, right? Because there's a lot of elements and factors within, right? The Dylan Rounds case isn't mysterious, but somewhat deep, right? The Kenny Veach MK case, mystery, missing person one, is deep and mysterious. Many more factors to play there. Just putting it into perspective. Was there anything else that was mentioned here besides all that? Not from the looks of it. Did Bob mention anything besides his comment here? I could have a quick look. Well, I've just loaded it up here. We've got it from Bob Farrell 19 hours ago. I'll just read it anyway. It's his initial response. So Bob says, what a joke that was with Nate Eaton and Candice Cooley. Bob Farrell spelt it wrong. Easton, it's Eaton. Okay. Bob saying, it lasted 3 minutes. What the hell? Again, she is a master at lying. We need a full fight against her and her BS regarding this case. All of her lies from day one. They all know who killed Dylan and why he is killed. Right, so Bob says Candice Cooley is a liar. She's lied 5,000 times and that they all know who killed Dylan. So Bob, why do you keep calling Candice Cooley out and not the others within this comment up to now? Because you're saying they all know. They means more than one person. Besides Candice Cooley, who else are you referring to? Justin, etc.? Let me know. Feel free to elaborate. Bob's saying they all know who killed Dylan and why he's killed. Just ask Kurt Wadsworth and his brothers, Troy and Scott Wadsworth, the one who has a neck like a giraffe, and his lying daughter, Lena. Protecting her father day after day. Your days are closing in on both of you idiots. I hope they charge you with lying to them, the FBI and Sheriff's Office. Kurt Wadsworth is hiding in his bar or on his property 5 miles outside of Montello, where he keeps his animals, pigs, ducks, horses, or whatever the hell he has out there. This is all about Kurt and Chase hating each other and wanting to kill each other. And they put Dylan in the middle of it. And he's the one who lost his life, not these scumbags. Kurt, Chase, Troy, Scott Wadsworth, but a young 19-year-old had to die for this druggie. Drunks and sheep bags. Welcome to Montello, Nevada. It's the wild, wild west. Anything goes. Kill whoever you want to kill. No one cares. They're all hiding in their houses. The Wadsworths is the mafia of Montello, Nevada. Their entire family are into the drug market, big money, and they know no one will touch them. Not even the police, FBI, sheriff, deputy. Hey, shitcakes. Salty pancakes, why don't you tell us about the place Kurt took you to on one of his property, where you threw up all over the place from the smell of a dead body? Tell us about that, Mikey boy. Your buddy Kurt took you to where Dylan is. and you got sick and threw up all over the place from the smell of death. I hope you rot in jail. I hope they charge you with holding information in a murder case. I hope they charge everyone in that town that knows anything and not coming forwards. Right, quite a lot there. And as for the comments, Corey said exactly, the truth's finally come on out, etc., etc. We've heard that where Corey was mentioning about Kurt Wadsworth, Chase Venster, the conflict there, and not getting involved and directly being targeted in the process of it all, and it getting messy. Do I agree with all of this? I'd say all of a sudden, boom, like that, hit with it. I mean, I've heard it from Corey over time. Let's just acknowledge that at least before people lose their heads and get angry, whatever. For now, though, it's just worth reading it out just so it's out there. Okay, what's been mentioned here. As for anybody and everybody watching, just leave your thoughts. Do you agree with this? Do you believe in it? Or do you think it's BS? Leave comments down below.
So, as said, besides that one, you've still got that other article by East Idaho News, and I will be taking a look at that tomorrow, probably, and if not, the day after. Don't worry, there's still another Dylan Rounds coming up. But, appreciate and shout out to all the people that are still watching and have watched this video live or later on. If you did join late, be sure to rewind back to the beginning, because that's where the most important stuff was talked about, the latest updates regarding the case and Brenner, etc., from Candice Cooley's own words. This video was analysing it all, putting it into perspective and sharing my own thoughts, as well as looking at the comments and reactions from people. Granted, I didn't look at the comment section of my last video, which I was supposed to be doing, but that's just because of time reasons. This video is already long enough. I don't want it to be any longer, and as you know, storage, etc. But what I can do, maybe as an independent separate video, I can just do a discussion one, acknowledging all these other comments elsewhere, and go from there, because I know 28 Alice left a comment on my last video, so I do need to look back at that and see what she's got to say, because she did leave a long paragraph, so that'll be interesting, right? So with that all being said and done, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know if your thoughts have changed on that CrimeCon interview, or if you still think it's not too great, and your thoughts overall on the case, and even what Jim Tay, Bob Farrell have said. Leave all your comments down below. For now, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night.